To explain what makes Asura's Wrath worth playing, it's important to know a bit about the background of its developer, CyberConnect 2. The best way I could describe them would be passionate. If you've ever played their games based on Naruto or JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, you can tell they're made by people that genuinely care about the source material, as their games drip with love and respect. This is the same developer whose president, Hiroshi Matsuyama, decided to participate in the Paris Marathon in 2012, dressing up in full Naruto cosplay, promising to run the full 42 kilometers, but retire only after around about 22, which led to worldwide reports of Naruto retires, and it made for a pretty great segment in a documentary about Tekken Tag Tournament 2. I guess what I'm trying to say is that CyberConnect 2 are a developer that loves anime and manga, and have made their name on creating some of the most striking and faithful adaptations of anime out there, which is why the one time they were able to effectively create their own original anime might actually be the most interesting, if flawed project that CyberConnect 2 have ever created. And that's not an exaggeration, by the way, on Asura's Wrath basically being an original anime. If you don't believe me, here's a handy checklist. お前の罪をあがなうために大回転にその身をさ哀れな男だ。Throw in some post-episode interstitials to further the plot, a couple of surprising bonus episodes, and a heap of extra content, and you've effectively got an entire box set of an anime. While there have been certainly plenty of games to take inspiration for their presentation from anime, it never goes as far as what Asura's Wrath does. And yet, the game is aware of how ridiculous it all is. This is a game with 3, count them, 3 press start screens. Those aforementioned monologues from the villains, you can interrupt them at any time, not only giving you an achievement, but a satisfying shot of Asura interrupting the action. It's these moments that make the game stand out, because playing it is easily its weakest aspect. In Asura's Wrath, the majority of the gameplay is you fight against a single enemy or a group of enemies, and fight it out until you fill up a meter, asking you to burst. Once you've burst, you trigger the next sequence of events. Peppering these sequences are plenty of quick time events, something that was already passé in 2012. There's not too much to the combat, so those expecting any real depth will be disappointed. Cynically, you might just think this is yet another anime arena fighter, yet at the same time, it weirdly works in the game's favor. CyberConnect 2's fighting games were never the most in-depth or satisfying. You play them just to see the next cool cutscene that lavishly recreated the thing you like. But because these gameplay sequences are so brief in Asura's Wrath, it almost feels like it balances out the ratio of tedious gameplay to hype spectacle in the player's favor. The only exception comes in the extremely weird DLC episodes that are effectively full anime episodes, just with the game playing over them. It's perhaps the weakest overall part of the game, because it doesn't really feel terribly satisfying, nor does it revel in spectacle. And boy, does Asura's Wrath deliver in spectacle. Within the first hour, you're fighting planet-sized enemies, and it never really lets up from there. Even when the scale is significantly lowered, the individual fights between characters are incredibly satisfying, with the quick time event prompts working to help make each fight that much more frenetic and exciting. If anything else, Asura's Wrath is worth checking out just for the spectacle and fights contained within. Tying it up neatly is the character of Asura himself. Don't get me wrong, the story is kind of dumb, and Asura isn't much more than an angry, rangy, shouty punch man, but I think that's what works. There's an awareness to the whole thing that makes Asura kind of endearing. When you've got a character that's written in such a way that he's willing to punch something so much that his own mechanical arms break off, and then take on another opponent using nothing but his head and legs, I don't know, there's something about that I find hilarious and amazing at the same time. And then there's the ending, or rather, how it's treated. After forcing you to replay the final episode in a true version, Asura's Wrath ends on a cliffhanger, with the alleged intent being to continue the story in a sequel that never materialized. Instead, the game continued in a DLC pack which contained 4 additional episodes to conclude the story. Controversially, the DLC wasn't a free release or even a patch to the game, it was paid content released 2 months after the original release. It's a move that didn't go down well with a lot of people for extremely obvious reasons. After all, it's not exactly an easy feat to ask players players to pay for a true ending and spin that as a thing people would and should want to do. Yet at the same time, the Part 4 DLC might actually be one of the strongest parts of the game, concluding Asura's story in such a way that it might be one of the rare games to have a fully satisfying ending. It varies up the quick time events enough and sticks to landing so well it genuinely feels like a great conclusion to a story. This paid DLC releasing a month after a certain other game just so happened to completely miss the runway as far as the ending goes is an irony not lost on me. Sadly, Asura's Wrath didn't have much of a legacy after it released. Capcom hasn't really done much of anything with the character, who would have been an interesting addition to their crossover fighting games. CyberConnect 2 haven't expressed an interest in returning to the character, but is still around and have been mostly working on more anime and manga adaptations, even opening a studio in Montreal in 2016. At one point, they were set to be developing the remake of Final Fantasy VII, until Square Enix decided to bring the project in-house. It wasn't until 2018 when CyberConnect 2 announced they were working on more original properties again, announcing 3 original games as a trilogy of vengeance to take them into the next decade, the first of which is set to be released in 2020. Will any of these games be as exciting or unique as Asura's Wrath? Maybe, I can't read into the future. What's clear though is that 7 years after its release, there's still not been anything quite like Asura's Wrath. At best, we get something like a Dragon Ball FighterZ, which does a great job of trying to feel like a Dragon Ball game should, and at worst, we get endless middling arena fighters that take series you like and not do anything interesting with them. Then again, there's not really a developer quite like CyberConnect 2 who are more than happy to take the concept of an arena fighter and expand on it on some interesting and weird ways. With Asura's Wrath now available as one of the Xbox One's last backwards compatible updates, there's no better time than right now to dive in and give it a shot and see one of the last generation's more unique titles in action, and it comes highly recommended.